No, I'm not a national champion. The collegiate national champions this year in Division One's volleyball was Penn State University. Huge congratulations to them, especially considering that the head coach of that university, Katie Schumacher, is battling cancer and was battling it throughout their entire season. It's an accomplishment on its own in and of itself to win a national championship, but to be able to do it amidst all the angst and fear, worries and love and compassion I'm sure that the girls had towards their coach, along with the faculty and staff. But you're like, what are you talking about? No, you're not a national champion if you're anything like me. And yeah, if you've never seen my face before, my name is Jiana Lawson, and this is my new podcast, the Miniature Mic Monologue. Welcome back to the Miniature Mic Monologue. I got the idea to start this podcast because I saw these miniature mics being used online, I think, for just regular videos. And I was like, I should start a podcast and call it the Miniature Mic Monologue because nobody's done that. I got that idea about 4 years ago. And 4 years later, here I am starting the podcast. Now back to that national champion thing. Yeah, so I have spent the last 5 years of my life playing collegiate volleyball. I just finished my final season with the LMU Lions this past fall. We were the 2024 West Coast Conference champions, and that is the first time I have ever won a conference championship, or any championship for that matter, that holds any significance and or influence. And I had the best volleyball year of my life this year. But I did not start playing volleyball 5 years ago. I actually started playing 8 years ago. It will be 9 years in August of this year, 2025. And I randomly ran into volleyball when we moved to Arizona because that's not where I'm originally from. I was in the band, actually, and we were at band camp, okay? I'm not a band kid. My mom is a band kid. Therefore, I became a band kid because my mom was a band kid and I thought I might like it. I didn't. I was only in the band my freshman year of high school and I never went back. Thank God. Anyways, while I was in the band, something great did come out of it. One of the trombone players that was 1 year older than me, she stood next to me in one of the key formations in the show that we were doing. And while we were taking a break, she was like, hey, you should come to volleyball tryouts. I think you'd really enjoy it. They start today, or they started whatever. I don't know if she said they started today or a couple of days ago, but she was like, you can still come. It's so much fun. I really recommend it. And I was like, okay. And before this, I had done every sport. I had even tried out for volleyball in middle school, but I didn't make the team. And for some odd reason, I was devastated. Like, I was so upset when I didn't make the volleyball team in middle school. And from that point on, I swore that volleyball was stupid because I literally made every other sports team I tried out for. I played basketball, I ran track, I was a cheerleader, and I did all of that in middle school. There was even a short time where I was dancing for a academy that was competitive, and it was called Showtime, and we were preparing to go to nationals, and we were good. So yeah, I basically did everything, or had the opportunity to do everything. I even played Pee-wee soccer when I was little, but I swore that off for a different reason, and we're not going to go there because that's a negative memory, and we're talking about positive sports memories. Not even remembering all the story I just told you, I just wanted to give you guys some background into sports and how it was so weird that I was seemingly unnecessarily overwhelmingly devastated by the fact that I didn't make the volleyball team in 7th grade. Fast forward 2 years later, now I'm in the 9th grade in a new state. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to play volleyball. So I go home to tell my mom, hey, one of my bandmates is like, you should try volleyball. You really love it, like all this stuff. And for the first time in my life, my mom goes, no. What? What do you mean no? And she was like, no, I don't want you to do that. And I was like, hello? Okay. This, if you want to call it that, this is the first form of opposition that I received when trying to become a volleyball player. It was my mother. And I can't even remember why she told me that she didn't want me to play volleyball when I asked her. She just was like, no, I don't want you to do that. I had to beg this woman for like 2.5 days to let me go to volleyball tryouts. Like, tryouts were going on for 2 days after I found out about them, and she wouldn't let me go. So of course we go back to band, practice, class, whatever. And this girl asked me, she's like, hey, are you coming out to volleyball? I'm like, yeah, I really want to, but like my mom keeps telling me no, but I'm going to convince her. So finally we come home one day after practice. There's like awkward silence in the car. We're sitting in the garage and I'm like, Mom, why won't you let me try out for volleyball? And she just kind of sat there silently. She then went to say something about why she didn't really want me to play. She kind of explained her reluctance toward it. And then like 4 minutes later, eventually, she was like, all right, fine. So then we got back in the car or stayed in the car, can't remember, drove to Walmart and got knee pads and I went to volleyball tryouts. Okay. That was 2016. And tried out for the last 3 days. I finally made it the last 3 days of tryouts. And then I ended up making the freshman team that year. But for some odd reason, something possessed me when I got to tryouts. Like even before, when my mom finally said yes, I was like, I'm going to make varsity. You're going to make varsity? You're gonna make varsity, Jiana. You've never played volleyball in your whole life. The mini peppering that you did outside your house when you were trying out in the 7th grade doesn't count. You don't know how to play the sport. But I was convinced that I was going to make varsity. I even went to my youth group and told my youth group leaders to pray for me because I was like, you guys, I really want to make varsity. I believe I can make varsity. Like, please just pray for me. And then I went to the tryouts and I began playing, and I think we were playing queens at the time, like back row queens. I had no idea what was going on. And they were like, serve the ball, right? And I saw all the other girls my age underhand serving. And I was like, okay. And I look to the court next to me and I see all the other girls that are older look like they're on varsity overhand serving. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try to overhand serve. This memory is so vivid in my head. I went to overhand serve. I hit it as hard as I could and it fell just short, like right in front of the tape, hit the tape at the top, fell down into the middle. And then I think one of the coaches was like, all right, next serve. And I just was like, huh. Okay, like I did it, I guess. Like I didn't make the serve, but it's fine. Like at least I tried or whatever, right? Anyways, a couple days passed. We're having tryouts. I can't exactly recall if these were tryouts or open gyms the first couple of days, but I know I was at least 1 day late to tryouts. Trying to keep that 100, but it was a long time ago and I don't really remember. I just remember one day, I think it was that same day after I couldn't successfully overhand serve, I realized I might be in over my head here. Like I don't know if me making varsity is going to make any sense. And that was the extent of where that thought went at 14 years old. At 22 years old, I can now say literally even in an alternate universe where I would have made the varsity team, I definitely would have rode right backbench. And not even that, like, I don't even think I would have made varsity. I would have been on JV, if anything, but because I didn't know how to play volleyball. Like, anyways, I'm telling you that story because it's providing context for where this dream came from. What on earth possesses a 14-year-old child who's never played volleyball before in her entire life, just had to scrap with her mom verbally to get her to let her try out for the team because who really cares? And why is she saying no? Because I've always played sports. Why would I ever think? And I believed so deeply in my heart that I was going to make varsity at 14 years old with zero volleyball experience. I mean, I wish you could hear me blinking. Like, it's really like, are you serious, girl? Are you serious? I am trying to set the scene, to create a picture, a foundation of where my crazy, ridiculous faith steps into the picture. Because if you didn't know, Jesus is my life. He is the reason for my life. He's the reason for all of my lives. Our lives, the reason for all of our lives. And I really got serious about serving him that same year. I moved to Arizona and started going to Catalina Foothills High School. And so I believe, and I couldn't see it at that time, but I can now looking back, that was the Holy Spirit trying to stir up faith in me. That is context. It is the foundation of where the faith that I had to come to college and say, I'm going to be a national champion came from. It was a dream. I dreamed to play at the highest level in high school because I had no idea about college volleyball. I didn't have any idea about club volleyball. So like I'm trying to prove to you that I had no concept previous to me deciding that I was going to be serious about my relationship with Jesus of dreaming of something like becoming a national champion or making the varsity team at high school, because I didn't even know what volleyball was. Like, and I didn't care. I mean, I knew what it was. That's a bit of an over dramatization and a lie, because I knew what it was, but I couldn't even conceive that I would be here almost 10 years later, a decade later, and most of my relationships and everything that has been good in God in my life has come from volleyball. So let me not leave you on a cliffhanger. Obviously, I ended up making a team that year in high school. I made the freshman team. I think we won one game. We were bad, you guys. We were not good, all right? It was actually the last game of the season, my freshman year. That was the game we won, and the parents brought these snacks. Like, they were so cute. It was a bougie high school, and all the parents made snacks. Like, they rotated days, and that day they had brought cupcakes, and like, it was nice, right? And one of my teammates was like, are you going to play club? And I was like, what's club? And she was like, club volleyball. And I'm just looking at her like, you're going to have to keep explaining because I have no idea what you're talking about. I came from a very small town before I came to Tucson, and Tucson now has a population well over 1 million. I'm not sure what it was when I got there in 2016, but like, club volleyball was not a thing. There were 3 middle schools in the city that I grew up in and 1 high school. I kid you not. And one of the middle schools was on the Air Force Base, which is the primary reason that town exists. Anyways, they tell me a little bit more about club. They're like, oh my gosh, you have to try for club, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to play for this club. I'm going to play for this club. So then I'm like, okay, I got to go tell my mom. And then I'm like, you guys, she's not going to let me do it. Like, my mom is not going to let me do that. And then they're like, it's okay, we'll get our moms and they'll talk to your mom and tell you all about it, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, I end up going to an open house for Cactus, and my mom hated it. I liked it as a naive 14-year-old because there were so many girls, and I was like, oh my gosh, this looks like the place to be. Everybody wants to be here. What do I know? Absolutely nothing. Anyways, my mom knew better than me, thank God, and we went to this open house for Sava right after that one. But we go over to the Sava one, and it's like really weird, low-key. There's not a lot of people there. There's this really tall Peruvian lady with her 2 little sons and a random white man named Michael Owens. And the tall Peruvian lady is Natalia Owens, his wife, and they own this club. And my mom begins talking to Michael, and they talk for, I kid you not, probably an hour and 40 minutes. Like, they were talking forever. And I was like, what are y'all doing? But I didn't care because I could like mess around and pepper with the volleyball with her little sons. And I don't know if their daughter, Andrea, might have been there. But yeah, I was just messing around. And then at some point I got involved in a conversation because Michael wanted to see my aptitude to playing volleyball. And I was just really excited. So I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know why we're still here. I don't really care. Touching a volleyball, having a great time. Long story short, I end up trying out with Sava volleyball. here's that foundation of crazy faith again. Okay. I told my mom, I was like, I'm going to make a black team. Black team was the top level of club team at Sava Volleyball. That meant you were the best of the best that the club had to offer at that age group. And as a freshman in high school, with my birthday falling in July, that meant that I was trying out for the 15U team. Now, I don't know where this group of girls came from that had been with Sava the previous year, but they were good, okay? These 14-year-old girls, for however long they'd been playing volleyball, it was way longer than 4 months. I'm going to just say that. It was way longer than 4 months. They were really good. And I could see that. I really could, but I didn't care. I was like, I can do that. And my mom was like, okay. She was kind of like, all right. This is her reaction after me telling her I'm going to make a black team. And after us going to an open house and seeing all these girls, 6 foot, 6'2", 5'10". I'm like 5'7", maybe 5'6.5", low key. I was little my freshman year and I was skinny as a twig. So my mom is watching this and hearing me talk and she's like, okay. Okay. And I was determined, right? Okay. So the day of tryouts comes. We finish. I had been doing better. Like I learned a lot, even though I didn't know anything about volleyball from the time that we did open gyms to the time that we finally got to tryouts. And it was time. Like the air was tense. They brought everybody from that age group in a big circle. I think there were like 30 girls that tried out. And they were only putting 12 on each team. Actually, I think there were 40 girls. And if you don't know, being on the black team means you travel to the best tournaments that your coaches find available in your region, or if you're like one of the top clubs, the ones that are invitationals like Kansas City and stuff like that. So it cost a lot of money. It cost a lot of money to be on a black team. All right. And so he is doing the fluff talk, like telling us, thank you guys so much for coming out. There's been a lot of talent. You know, we've had a really hard time picking out the girls, blah, 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 blah. I'm standing in the circle like, all right, tell me I'm on a black team, mofo. Like, you better tell me I'm on the black team. So he finishes talking and he says one of the coaches is going to call these girls out and we're going to take you back to the room and you're going to sign contracts. The order that they called the girls in was like the order of talent and value that they thought the girls would bring to the team, right? And they made the list. It was like a 24 girl list, right, of all the girls that made it to the team, and they divided it at 12, and they ended up making another 15s team, which they didn't expect to do. They only expected to make one. So they were like, if you don't get called back first, like, please don't leave. We're making another team, blah, blah, blah. So he starts calling girls out, all the girls that you expect to be on the team, all the girls that are like 6 foot tall at 14 years old, which is freaking ridiculous, low key. Calling them back one by one. Now we're at number 3, number 4, number 5. I'm standing there. I'm like, okay, well, I know I'm new, so maybe I won't get called at the front, but maybe I'll get called at the end. Now we're at number 6, number 7, number 8. Now I'm like, okay, like, I'm not fazed by this. I'm like, I know I made a black team. I'm standing there like, I know I made a black team. My mom is like somewhere back there in the distance, just waiting and watching me to see what happens. They call number 9, number 10, number 11. And I'm like, ooh, this is the only spot they can call my name in. The only spot. They call somebody else for number 12. And they go back to the room. And I was like, okay. So we're standing out there. I don't even know what happened in those minutes that we were waiting for them to go back, make a discussion, tell them basically that that's the black team for the 15U this year, sign the papers, and then leave because you have to sign a contract. There's all this stuff, right? And my mom is looking at me. I'm looking at her. I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I didn't really believe that it was over. Like, I didn't know what they were going back there to say. You could have gone back there to say that we're going to make it the 2s team. Like, whatever. They come back out. They're like, okay, so this is the second team. Mind you, there's the 12 girls that made the top team. They were really good. The other girls that were also there, they were also above average good. Like, they had been playing for a long time. They were very skilled to be 14-year-olds. Like, they weren't bad. There's obviously just always a line of separation, right? Sometimes there's preference due to political stuff and different relationships. You know what I'm saying. So anyways, we knew that they were still reading from the list, right? Like the top 24 girls, they called the first 12 back. He comes back out and is like, Noelle, who's going to be the head coach of this team, who is the reason that I'm literally playing the sport. As I keep telling the story, whether it's in this podcast or in other ones, you will come to know that Noelle is like the primary factor in my volleyball story. Like, a lot of what I've done and been able to do revolves around him. Anyways, let me not get sappy. Anyways, so he comes out and he was like, okay, so I'm going to call out the names, blah, blah, blah. Can you please get your parents, come back to the room? Jiana Lawson. And I just looked at my mom and she was like, and I was like, I was smirking because I was like, I knew it. Like, I was number 13, dog. Like, if someone else would have said, I don't want to be on the team, they would have been like, not so good that day or something else, I would have been one of the first 12 called back. Okay, right. That's not important. Let's fast forward to when we get in the room, because I'm like, yeah, I knew I should have made one of the teams anyways. Like, I'm low-key kind of pissed off because I didn't make the first team because I knew that would be a black team and I didn't want to be on the orange team, right? We get back there, we sit down, they have the contracts laid out. We're in this conference room at Sporting Chance Academy. We're in there. They have all the papers laid out. I sit down in front of one. I look at it, and guess what the team name says? Sava 15-2 Black. What? The physical reaction that I just had was the display of excitement and emotion that I had in my body in 0.1 nanoseconds before I looked at the paper, smirked again, picked it up, held it to my mom, and showed it to her. And she was just like, I said, and I literally remember this so vividly. I said, I told you I was going to make a black team. And she was like, oh my God. She was like, you did. She was like, you did it. And I was like, told you. So let me get to the point here, because that's a great story telling you about my life, blah, 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 all this stuff. My freshman year of high school, made the freshman team for volleyball, made the 15-2s black team, which was something the club had never done in the history of their existence. They usually always made a black team and an orange team, but there was so much talent that year, and there really was. Obviously, including me, because I was part of the team, but like the collective team that I was on that year was extremely talented, playing high-level volleyball for Tucson, Arizona, right, at the age of 15. I played on the second team that year. I went on to be a 3-year varsity starter letter winner from my sophomore year to my senior year, and I was on the top team every year in club for the next 3 years, right? Faith that I had there was the same faith that I had to make the black team. That went right. Was the same faith that I had when I was watching college volleyball religiously for my freshman year, my sophomore year, my junior year, watching Inkia Janaku in 2016 in her senior season lead those freshmen to a national championship, because she was a middle, which is the position I was playing, and I did play, whatever. And she was black girl. I was like, that literally is me. Like, I am going to be her in 4 years playing at Stanford, winning a national championship. This clearly does not say Stanford. And if you don't know anything else about my college career, I didn't start here. I did not start here. I started at the University of Portland. I technically only spent 1 season there because the season that we played in the spring during COVID did not count. And after I learned, or I will say it like this, after I got my introduction to the real world and found out that people lie, and after I learned that you can get to the highest level and still not become or be fighting to become the highest version of yourself, you can be settling to be the hurt version or the lesser version or the bitter version. After I found that out, I was like, I have to go. So I left that university and I transferred to San Jose State, where I spent my true junior and true senior year. But because of COVID, like I said earlier, the first season that I played at Portland as a freshman didn't count. We went through a head coaching change in what would become my final year at San Jose State. And ultimately, that led to me deciding to leave and transfer to play my graduate season, which I had not originally intended to do. And I transferred to LMU. I'm sure I'll make another podcast talking more in depth about my college journey because there's a lot more to be detailed, and I really want to get into that. There's even so much more to be detailed in my club years, talking about people who were pivotal in building me into the player that even allowed me to get to the Division I level. So there will definitely be more podcasts about that, but that is not this podcast. Don't worry, I won't leave you hanging. But I ultimately ended up at Loyola Marymount University. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, this was my favorite and best year of volleyball, winning aside. My college journey in and of itself, it was jam-packed. Like, it was complex, to say the very least. It is a crucial time in your life when you officially like get to go and be out on your own by going to college. And I literally went to a place I had never been before my freshman year in Portland, Oregon. And I was far from home, which didn't bother me because I've always been an independent person. Like, I was an independent child. My mom told me this memory that she has of me playing on like one of those big fake kitchen sets, talking to her about how excited I am to be an adult and have my own apartment and be cooking. And it's a really sweet memory when she told me that fact in and of itself, because I was literally calling her to show her what I had cooked at my apartment when I transferred to San Jose. So it's just like a sweet memory. But college was not like, it was not everything that I wanted it to be. It was everything that I needed it to be. And I say that, and I hope that you take that with a grain of salt, because I obviously titled this podcast and have centered this episode specifically around me not becoming a collegiate national champion, which was the dream that God set in my heart at 14 years old. And I knew I could do it. And I believed him throughout all 5 years of college, even when we were like 1-17 at Portland my first year, and then like 2-20 my second year. And then I went to San Jose State. We have a breakout season and lose in the Mountain West Conference Championship match. It's devastating in and of itself to lose, but knowing that I had that dream set down in my heart, like just waiting to blow up and to be ignited, and to, it's like I imagine a dynamite stick like down in my heart. And with every year, like when I first started playing volleyball, like we lit the dynamite stick and it was going. And then I get to that point in my junior year and we get so close, and the end of the stick that sets the dynamite off, it like stops. I was like, what the F? Like, what is this crap? And then we go to my senior year. I'm laughing because if I'm using that dynamite stick as a reference, no movement my senior year at San Jose State. But ignorance is bliss when you're living in that. But it was very difficult for me. It was very, very hard. And I had a tumultuous emotional and mental battle with the Lord after that, especially because I hadn't planned to transfer, and then I did transfer, and then it was very hectic for me. Like 2024, the year was not fantastic. Like, I cannot lie to you, I did not enjoy myself the whole time. But the last 6 months, July to December, playing volleyball, because that's basically all I was doing. I didn't have time for anything else except for eating, sleeping, and occasionally turning in my homework. But everything else, like, it was great. And I think I'm trying to give you as much context as possible so that you can understand what it has been like for me. Like, imagine that dynamite stick again. Like, I get here in the spring and it's like, okay, we're back on track. The fire starts going down the coil, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're getting there. And so we start off the season with a loss. It's like, oh, okay, and then we keep going, and then we start playing in conference. We start 5-0, lose a game, go on like an 8-game winning streak. Like it's the coil's going. My brain is turning, my spirit is turning. Like I'm trying to stay so mentally and spiritually invested, even after having a not great first half of the year. Physically, like in the carnal world, and it took a toll on me spiritually and mentally because I have been believing God for so long for this dream, and this is my last shot. And then the year starts out terrible, and I'm just like, I need to not let this bother me, but I'm getting older and so many things are changing, and the way that I see God is like, whoa, like whether or not this year comes to a close the way that I believed it to, which was becoming a national championship, like I have relied on you believing for this dream, not just for myself, but for my life. Like this dream for me was the kickstart of my life, like the second half of my life where I actually get to take control of it and decide what my day-to-day looks like. And I believed God for that. And so I hope you can understand how devastating it was when I get to the NCAA tournament. Like we were the 2024 West Coast Conference champions. I told you guys, like it was amazing. We went 16-2 in conference. We were undefeated at home, 13-0. Like it was a phenomenal volleyball year. And I think something that I can't believe I haven't even touched on, which was the personal aspect of it, which has always been very, very challenging for me. I've always been sort of an outcast. And I figured that when I got to play sports, that would kind of lessen, not necessarily disappear, but at least lessen. But it was the exact opposite. It increased because I was gifted athletic ability. And I have an aptitude to learn, and I learned really fast, and it allowed me to progress. Next to some of my peers who have been playing 5 years more than I have. And that's when you start to learn about jealousy and stuff like that. And it didn't get any easier, or the girls didn't get any kinder, or weren't any better at dealing with or coping with the fact that this girl is better than me and I've been playing longer than her, or this girl is better than me and I'm taller than her, or this girl is better than me and she just transferred in and now she's going to take my spot. Like that part of my life, dealing with the internal conflict that seeing people react to the gift that God has given me, was not great. Like I can't explain it in any other way than like it being the second version of me leaving the University of Portland, and after finding out people don't always tell the truth and they're not who they say they are all the time. It was like, okay, yeah, you learned it at this level. Now you're going to learn it at this level with these people who are your peers, and these people who are also saying that they want to lead this team, but they can't lead themselves. And they only lead this team so that they feel like they have some sort of superiority complex over these people. Like you start to learn these things that people are doing. And it was so hard for me. Like I take everything on my chest, on my sleeve, on my person, because I'm sensitive. I've always been a super sensitive kid, and I used to want to get rid of that, but I've learned to embrace it. I'm still learning. Like it's really hard to maintain that sensitivity, and I don't do it for the people around me. I do it for God, because that's one of the ways he's used to speak to me and allow me to be a light to other people. But having to deal with that in situations where you know these people aren't for you, even though that they're your teammates, and you're going to have to be with them for the next projected 4 years, like when you go to a school. But when you start a season, it's like you're gonna be with these people for the next 6 months. Every single day you get one day off a week when it's in season. And then when you go to the spring, they get you in there as much as they can. Like you are always in that jam. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked, but the point is, it's so hard. It was like a constant mirror around me. Like, you know those rooms that they have at circuses, and then it's like you go in and it's all these different mirrors and they distort the way that you look at yourself. Like personally, that's what college was like for me. And I didn't have anyone next to me who I could turn to that would understand me besides the Lord. And it was really hard. So you can imagine I've gone through that. Personally, I've grown so much spiritually, trying to discipline myself and really become a student of God's word so that I can hear his voice clearly and, accomplish the bigger purpose of me being on these teams, which is being a testimony to the people around me about living life for Christ. And these people are like, F you, you're better than me at volleyball. And I'm like, bro, like, I didn't want to do that. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I didn't ask for that. It's just who I am. So could you stop antagonizing me for it? I get to the end of my college career having 4 years of that. And I come here in 2024 and it's like that stops. That the level of that I experienced personally with my teammates, it went away. Like there was a little trickle of like somebody was trying to do this, but I was so experienced at that point that I was like, first of all, I'm not going to let this bother me. Second of all, I'm not doing this with you. Okay. Handled it, squashed it, moved on. Like I was so at peace this year with my teammates. It was crazy. Like I actually wanted to be around them all the time. And anyone who was on any of my teams from any other years in college, they will tell you, you can ask anybody, I didn't want to be around those people ever, because the rejection of themselves that my gift as a volleyball player, I'm just talking about me as a volleyball player, the way that they were insecure about the gift that they had or the decision that they had made to play volleyball, the way that my gift evoked a response out of them was projecting rejection onto me. And that was already hard for me. So I was like, I am not hanging out with y'all. No, it's not happening. On top of the fact that I'm trying to live a holy and set apart life. And all y'all want to do is get drunk. Like, hey, to each their own. I'm not judging. Everybody makes their own decision. But I'm 18, 19 years old and I'm impressionable and I cannot hang around you people because I know what the Lord says about this. And if I want to get what I'm trying to get, which is eventually become a national champion and do all these other things, I can't be around you. So the fact that I even am saying that I liked them is insane. The fact that I'm able to say that I'm a conference champion is insane. And all of this stuff was adding to the relighting of like the imaginary dynamite stick that is my heart, okay, at this point in time. I'm not going to call it my heart. I'm going to call it my faith, which is what fuels everything about my life. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're almost there. Winning a conference championship is an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. So like, we didn't even have to worry about that. Whereas in past years, that was something we had to worry about. Not really at Portland. It wasn't going to happen there, okay? And I was okay with that. In the Mountain West, you can see all that providing context, right? But all of those things, relighting the fire, adding faith, but in my mind, as you can see, or if you couldn't tell by the illustrations that I gave you about the way that I believed about volleyball from the beginning, those were just my standards, my expectations of what the Lord could do and how he delivers in the lives of those who he loves. So I wasn't shocked by any of that this year. I wasn't shocked when I made the black team. I wasn't shocked when I made varsity the next 3 years. I wasn't shocked when I got my first interest letter from Abilene Christian University as a 14 or 15-year-old. I wasn't shocked because I knew what the Lord said about me and that it wasn't even about getting to play Division I college volleyball where so many other people around me were worried about that for me. I was never worried about that. And the same faith that I had about like the process leading up to me getting to college is the same faith that carried me through college and didn't leave me any room for doubt about what God was going to do in my life. But in the year 2024, I really had to face some like, I'm starting to be a little bit weary. Okay. I wasn't doubting, but I was like, I'm getting a little stressed out here, God. It kind of seems like you're toying with me because you've had 4 opportunities now, and this is the final one. But you can imagine my relief when everything starts well in the spring, and then we get to that place in December and like playing in my final game as a collegiate volleyball player at Stanford, like I never stopped believing. I know it's going to sound crazy. I know it doesn't make any sense. Like we were getting our tails kicked. Okay. We just could not find a groove. Like we could compete with Stanford. We knew that. Stanford knew that. And I think that's why they came out and played so well, because no disrespect, they had been playing that well leading up to that point. But I never stopped believing, but it was so doing that almost made it even more painful when we lost. And once we did lose, I was like, what? Like, as a person, emotionally, mentally, it was a lot for me to process. But once I did finally start to process, what I ultimately decided was that this stick of dynamite that I've been using to represent and illustrate my faith, like, it has not reached to the point where heaven comes down to earth in my life. And I was like, and if it hasn't reached that point, that therefore means that, okay, I might not be a collegiate national champion. No. In fact, I'm not a collegiate national champion, but I will be a national champion. And that's ultimately where I'm at in regards to this question. It's taken a lot of emotional processing and maturity. And I can only thank my family for exposing me to Christ and the church so young, allowing me to stay rooted in this and even go to the place where I'm like, I don't want to do this faith thing anymore. Like, take this dynamite stick, get it away from me, and still come back and be like, no, because I believe in the Lord. And if he didn't do what he said, it's not done. And it might not have been done the way that I wanted it to be done. And it might have been extremely painful to experience that and very hard for me to process and come back from. But I will not die on this hill. Like, if this story was not indicative of anything else, it's the fact that I will not be done until I see what God says. So, no, I am not a collegiate national champion, but I will be a national champion. And that's all I have for this episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next mini mic monologue. Bye.